Hello everyone, welcome to the Joget webinar. My name is Penny and I'm your moderator for today's session. In this webinar, we will be featuring Joget Partner, Innov8tif Solutions, and we will showcase how you can revolutionize your customer identity assurance and protect your users from identity theft with EMAS CIDA, powered by the Joget no-code local platform. Before we dive in, let's go over some housekeeping items. First of all, today's session will be recorded, and if you miss out any of our sessions today, no worries as you have the access to the recording later. Moving on, if you have any questions in between the session, do not hesitate to reach out to us via the chat or the Q&A button in the Zoom control panel, and we will get to it as many as we can at the end of the webinar. You will also be directed to a feedback form after today's session. And as always, we are happy to hear about your webinar experience. Your opinions matter to us, and we would really appreciate it if you could take a moment and provide your feedback for an improved webinar to attend in the Last but not least, we will be giving out 2 Joget Academy vouchers today at the end of the webinar. So stay till the end with us, and who knows, you might be one of the 2 lucky winners. Moving on. Today, we have the pleasure to invite our partner, Innov8tif Solutions. And Neil, he will be sharing how you can enhance your customer onboarding process with identity verification, authentication, and the benefits of customer identity assurance. He will speak along with Hugo, the VP of Customer Success at Joget, where he will walk us through how we can get started on the Joget platform, along with some customer use cases in the finance and insurance sectors. So Neil and Hugo, would you like to say hi to the audience?
Yes. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Over to you, Hugo.
Yep. Thank you, Neil. Pleasure to have you here, Neil. Yeah, good to have everyone here. Thanks for joining our session today. Over to you, Penny. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Hugo. With that, let's take a look at today's agenda. To start with, we will first have a quick introduction of Innov8tif Solutions, followed by the necessity of customer identity assurance. One is EMAS CIDA powered by Joget, with a demo showcase and how to get started on Joget. Without further ado, I will now pass it over to Neil to kickstart the webinar. Neil, over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Penny. Let me resume the presentation over here. All right, yeah. So today, thanks everyone for joining. I'm Neil from the Innov8tif. I'm the technical pre-sales that will be taking us through customer identity assurance powered by Joget. So just a brief introduction on what Innov8tif, who we are, and how we actually operate, where we actually operate. So we are incorporated here in Malaysia. We have our main branch here, but we do actually have branches in Singapore as well as Indonesia. Our customer base also does exist in all 10 ASEAN countries. And we also do have local partners and teams in Brunei, Cambodia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. Some background on our company as well. Here in Malaysia, we actually recently went through a merger together with Zentity, which is one of making us actually the largest identity assurance company here in Malaysia and a major player in the ASEAN region. And then lastly, but not least, we are also a Joget Certified Accredited Plus partner who has been working with Joget since Innov8tif's inception, right? We do have a lot of experience working with Joget, both with the platform as well as the company, with over 200 processes automated together. All right, so moving on to the topic of today, which is basically the customer identity assurance solution. So what is customer identity assurance? Customer identity assurance basically consists of these 3 pillars that we are listing over here. So basically the identity proofing, customer due diligence, as well as identity authentication. These are the 3 components of what constitutes the processes of making sure that your customer's identity is genuine, The first that we can look at is the identity proofing. So identity proofing is basically a component or process where you would use to verify a customer, right? So this can take place using a identity card, for example, where in order to onboard a customer, in order for the customer to be onboarded, they would go through an onboarding process where they would need to scan an ID document. And then on the back end, on your application would need to verify the identity document and make sure that the person in front of the camera is a live person and the same person as the ID document, right? So this component does include things such as eKYC, live scanning, face scanning, biometrics. All this is under the identity proofing side of things. The next step that customers will usually go through is basically the customer due diligence. If you're in the banking sector or the financial sector, this would be something that is very familiar to you. Something related would be KYC, right? So CDD basically refers to things such as the AML side of things, credit reports, to make sure that the customer does not exist in certain blacklists or sanctions or global blacklists and whatever not, right? So that is the CDD side of things. For the next pillar would be identity authentication, right? So after the customer is onboarded, you would see most of this solution being implemented. So one of the previous implementations that's very widespread nowadays is the SMS OTP, which would be the authentication for verification for transactions and whatever not. However, there are quite a lot of incidents recently with the SMS OTP, especially here in Malaysia, where there has been attacks on that. So we are continuously trying to improve and upgrade this feature, this component of customer ID assurance. So now the current solution that is usually used for identity authentication is device binding, biometric authentication, and things like that we will go in deeper later on. All right, so moving on to EMAS eKYC. So what is EMAS eKYC? EMAS eKYC is basically the digital ID verification process that conducts the verification of the ID document to ensure that the customer being onboarded does not have any intentions of fraud, identity fraud, right? So this would be under identity proofing. All right, before we jump into the meat of things, I will proceed to the first poll. Penny, over to you.
Thank you, Neil. Let me launch the first poll. So the question is, which industry do you belong to? And there are 5 options available. So please take your time and to vote, and we will announce the result in a few minutes' time. We have 45% of the audience today is coming from system integrator field, and another 9% of the audience today is from the finance sector. So with this, I believe this gives a little bit of insights into what Neil is going to share in the subsequent section. So I'll hand it back to Neil to walk us through the necessity of customer ID assurance. Neil, over to you.
Thanks, Penny, and thanks everyone for giving us the insights on where you're actually from so that we can tailor this experience for you as well. All right, so moving on with the content over here, we'll be moving on to the necessity of customer ID assurance, basically the landscape of the e-commerce markets and whatever not, post-COVID especially, right? So as you can see from here, these are some stats just to show for the state of e-commerce. On the left-hand side, you can see for retail e-commerce sales, there has been an experience of a very large growth of 56% worldwide growth, especially past the post-COVID era where everyone is actually going online, right, to buy things. Also, the mode of purchasing all these goods, mobile wallets, has also experienced a very large increase and actually has captured a lot of the e-commerce transactions market, right? It has actually captured 54%. So we see that a lot of these channels of mobile wallets does have a very high demand on the components that I mentioned before, right? The customer ID assurance, right? So things such as verifying that the customer is not a fraud, because mobile wallets actually do not require you to go to a physical location in order to create an account, right? So you have to verify that person digitally completely, as well as make sure that the person does not have any fraudulent background. And then lastly, actually make sure that the person is not is actually the person doing the transaction, right? We'll go into that a bit deeper later on as well. And then lastly, on the online payment fraud, right, that we also see a very large estimated loss of over 206 billion estimated losses due to online fraud, estimated within a span of 4 years from 2021 to 2025. So there's a very large need for the counteract of all of the attacks that's done by the fraudsters. So over here, these are some types of frauds that is most commonly used over here. So as you can see from the first would be the synthetic identity fraud. So in this case, most fraudsters would do or deploy attacks such as a printed ID, or actually trying to replace certain information on a real ID to try and trick your system to actually pretend that they are a true identity, but actually it's a fake person, right? The second mode of fraud that we actually see is account takeovers, right? So customers that already have been onboarded, then have created an account and actually has, let's say, a bank account, for example. They already have a bank account registered with money inside, and then a hacker actually goes in and then takes advantage of, let's say, the SMS OTP, right? There has been quite a huge, big incident with that as well. They try and take advantage of the SMS OTP for the transactions when the user is maybe asleep, and they try and authorize transactions, right? That would be account takeovers. Next type of fraud that we also see is the new account abuse. This is quite similar to synthetic identity fraud, where customers actually create new accounts and pretend to be and create multiple new accounts in order to take advantage of newcomer perks and whatever not that is actually supposed to be only for one person. All right, so moving on to some benefits of customer identity assurance over here. On the left-hand side, you can see for the customers, some of the benefits would be, of course, that it is a lot more convenient, where the customer would not need to actually proceed to a branch a physical branch in order to conduct all of the onboarding processes and everything. Everything can be done from the comfort of their home or wherever they actually are. Also, the speed of approval is a lot faster due to the there is no waiting time, there's no human processing, everything can be done 24/7. So it is a lot more smoother experience for the ideal customer, the customers that you actually want to retain, the customers that are genuine customers. Lastly, of course, it does have a benefit of it being more private, where there's less human eyes on all of the documents, there's less need for manual verification and all that. So in order to inspire more confidence in the customer. On the business side of things, you would experience things such as the increased processing speeds of onboarding, right? So everything, like I mentioned before, can be run 24/7. All the authentication is done automatically. So over here, we can see that it's also reduced tedium, where staff will not need to actually conduct all of the manual verification and whatever not. It actually allows businesses to shift resources or human resources to places or departments that need it most. So for example, maybe not so much on manual verification, could shift more to customer support and some customer success departments, for example. It is also scalable, right? So the systems and servers and everything behind the processing, it's a lot more easier to scale when it's done with the customer eKYC. It is also a lot more consistent, where everything is done with no human error. All right, so over here, you can see a very brief overview of what a system would look like using customer ID assurance and all the features required for it to actually be deployed. So I know this looks a bit confusing, but please do look at the features layer over here. So as I mentioned before earlier in the slides, you can see the three pillars that I mentioned, right? So the identity proofing, customer due diligence, and authentication and authorization. Right, so as you can see from the identity proofing side of things, the EMAS eKYC, which is ID verification, the authentication of the identity document as well as the person in front of the camera. And we also do have components such as the digital footprint analysis, video call verification as well as part of our features as well. Today we'll just go through the EMAS eKYC. On the customer due diligence side of things, we do have the financial risk checks. This could be the AML, the credit scoring, whatever not, as well as components such as the income address proofing, which is basically the checks that you do nowadays, for example, when you're doing, let's say, a bank account opening, they will require you to actually snap a picture of your utility bill or your bank slip, for example. This is basically under the income and address proofing. Biometric alert list, right? So this is basically for blacklists based on face data, right? So if you actually do have businesses where they have a database of all the fraudsters' faces, for example, this would be under the biometric alert list. Authentication and authorization. Basically, this is the device binding MFA side of things, as well as if you do want to include things such as the SMS OTP or whatever not as well. All right, so on the channel layer, as you can see over here, this is where both the channel layer and the full access layer, these two layers, is basically where it comes into play. As you can see over here, process automation and low-code development, where it actually provides a platform, a low-code platform, in order to tie all these features that I mentioned below in a seamless and smooth experience for customers to be onboarded into your own systems, right? So do and bind. We'll show you actually a demo later on for a onboarding customer experience, customer ID assured system built on Joget. So stay tuned for that. All right, so diving into the pillars that I mentioned before, the identity proofing side of things. We'll be talking on the EMAS eKYC. So over here, you can see a very brief overview of all the components of eKYC, electronically know your customer. So over here, you can see all the steps that's required to verify your customer's identity via the ID card. So over here, you can see the first the customer would be conducted by our component, OKID. This would constitute the ID capture, the OCR, if it is required, NFC and chip reader as well. And then the next step they would go through is making sure that the person in front of the camera is a live person, right? Not a picture presented from screen or a paper printout. So this would be conducted by the OK Live product that we have at Innov8tif. Next component that we have is actually the OK Face, which is the facial verification. Facial verification meaning that it compares the person in front of the camera taking the picture with the ID document being presented. And then the last component we have over here is the OK Doc. OK Doc is one of the most important components where it does the document verification. So it makes sure that the ID card being presented or identity document being presented is a genuine copy, right? So it does checks such as screen detection, microprint detection, hologram detection to make sure that this is a genuine document. And then lastly over here, it's not really a component, but just something to highlight is that here at Innov8tif, we also do use a scorecard, rules-based scorecard approach, where it takes the results of all the components that I mentioned before and adds it into a rule-based scorecard. So it classifies the customer as one of these three categories: clear, cautious, and suspicious, without needing any tuning at the back end. All right, so a little bit more in depth into each of the components. I will highlight a few things. So on the OKID side of things, we do support various identity documents and worldwide passports. So on the identity document side of things, we actually do have support over 248 countries and territories for the identity documents, and worldwide passports as long as they are actually following the ICAO format. We also do have the NFC reading side of things for the OKID ID, where we are able to actually do the NFC reading for e-passports, as well as ID documents that have this feature, such as the Vietnam ID. Okay, liveness detection. Just some things to take note and highlight would be that it prevents spoof attacks. So things such as the deepfake presented from the screen and things like that, we do offer protection against that. For the OK face over here, just something to highlight would be something that I mentioned before, the one-to-N verification, meaning that let's say you have a database, a blacklist database, like I mentioned before, in your banking system or whatever not. This component will be able to do the verification between the customer's face and all of the database at the back end as well. It also does have the use case of a dedupe, right? So basically duplication. In case you do not have in case you want to actually prevent a customer from registering several accounts. Okay, over here is basically the document track. I'll go in on all of the features later on as well. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, scorecard, where everything is classified into 3 statuses, clear, cautious, or suspicious. All right, so moving on to OKDoc, just a bit more in depth into OKDoc, what the checks we have for the document verification, something that I think is quite interesting for all of us as well. So some checks that we have over here on the left-hand side, you can see the layout check is the first check. So layout check basically makes sure that all of the ID components are exactly where they are, so where they need to be, sorry. So things such as the flag or the logo or your ID face on your ID is in the correct positions, right? So this would be under layout check. Next check we have is quality check, where it does check for the image to make sure that there's no blur, there's no glare, things like that. And then we also do have content tampering check. So as you can see from the images over here, for example, if you try to actually print out a number and try and replace it over the card, over the actual number on the card. And then over here, you can see sometimes they actually try and print out fake year of expiry or whatever not, as well as actually try and replace the face image on your ID card. These are all attacks that we actually do prevent under content tampering. Screen presentation attack over here. See, this is the protection we provide against attacks that try to present the ID image from a screen, whether it be from a phone or PC or actually printed out. Certificate feature authentication. Over here is miscellaneous checks that we actually do have for certain documents that actually have these features. For example, the Malaysian ID card, if you look closely at the background of the identity card, there is very small lettering at the back called microprint. So this is one of the checks that we do have, as well as hologram detection. So the shiny bits on your ID card, when you flash the light, we do have detection for that as well. Just to highlight some of the patents that actually Innov8tif does hold in Malaysia. So we do have an innovation patent for microprint detection. As I mentioned before, the very tiny lettering at the background. And we also do have a innovation patent for the authentication method, where we have a photo with flash and without flash. All right, so moving over here, you can see some of the locations of all the checks that we have on a card. So over here, do bear in mind that this card is a non-existent card. It's just a sample. So over here, you can see the checks that I mentioned before, the hologram, where it's the shiny ink over here, as well as the microprint, the small lettering at the back, landmark detections. And over here on the left-hand side, you can see the check digit validation, where actually the machine generates these numbers and actually prints it out based on the content, right? So most of the time, some fraudsters actually are not able to crack the calculation behind these check digits, as well as comparing all the available information. All right, so moving on to customer due diligence, the CDD side of CIDA. Customer due diligence. So as you can see from the left-hand side, these are some of the components that we have in customer due diligence that are offered by Innov8tif. So we do have things such as the AML check or CFT, where you check the customer's name versus the global data sets of things such as AML, anti-money laundering lists, PEP, politically exposed people lists, sanctions, and all the actually global blacklist data sets that are available. Second component we have is the credit scoring, right? So when you are actually opening a investment account or whatever not, there may be a requirement for credit scoring. So there would be the credit reports to make sure that the person is not in debt or whatever not. Moving on to the next step, the next component. The next component over here you can see is the company profile search. So company profile search could be a credit report or whatever not, to actually find out who is the stakeholders and whatever not. It does include also UBO and things like that, components such as that. And then lastly, the income and address proofing side of things. So income and address proofing would be your utility bills, things like that would be part of the customer due diligence. All right, so moving on to the device binding side of things. So as I mentioned before, how you actually authenticate your customers after they have been onboarded, right? So if let's say a customer is trying to authorize a transaction, right? So how would you verify that this customer is a genuine person or the correct person? By device binding and biometric authentication. So here at Innov8tif, we do have a multi-factor authentication solution that is both device binding as well as utilizing biometric authentication. It also does meet the golden state standard of MFA, which is something the user knows, something the user has, and something the user is, like you see on the screen over here, providing basically a passwordless as well as highly secure solution. All right, so moving on to the third poll. Penny, over to you.
Thank you, Neil. Let me launch the third poll. What is the main pain point hindering your business from implementing fully digital onboarding with eKYC and ID assurance? So there are 5 options available. Number 1, insufficient understanding of eKYC and ID assurance processes. And number 2, concerns about data security and privacy in the digital onboarding process. Number 3, the lack of a robust and reliable eKYC solution that meets the specific business needs. And number 4, we have the resistance from customers or stakeholders who prefer traditional or offline onboarding methods. And the last option, which is non-applicable to the business. So as usual, we will leave it a few minutes for the audience to vote. Okay, let's end the poll. So we have 43% of the audience voted for the fourth option, resistance from customers and stakeholders who prefer traditional and offline onboarding methods, whereas another 21% said that they are having some concerns about data security and privacy in the digital onboarding process. And another 14% choose the first option, where there's insufficient understanding of eKYC and ID assurance process as well as their respective benefits. And another 7% voted for the third option, which is the lack of a robust and reliable eKYC solution that meets the specific business needs. So with that, I will now pass it back to Neil to walk us through some of the use cases. Neil, back to you.
All right, yeah, thanks again, Penny, for the valuable insights. Okay, so great to hear that, on the pain points of your implementations of the CIDA solutions. And hopefully today you will be able to find out more about the solution and how it can actually help your company in the business processes. So moving on to the next section that we have over here is the use cases of how CIDA solutions, customer identity assurance solutions, has been implemented in the real world. So one of the major use cases that we find both here in Malaysia as well as in the ASEAN region is telco industries, right? So now we see that there are a lot of self-service SIM registration and whatnot, where here in Malaysia, you do actually as a company that actually is fully digital telco, where they operate completely online without a dealer or physical branch. There is also a lot of businesses that basically have a option for customers to download the app and have that app as a channel for customers to be onboarded and register for a SIM card that is actually available 24/7 due to the nature of it being a digital platform. Another use case we see over here is basically for the digital banking side of things, the digital banking industry. Over here, we can see that a very large presence, there's a very big uptake in digital banking and digital banking apps, where people now are doing transactions over online and everything is going through mobile wallets or online transactions. So where eKYC and customer identity assurance comes into play is basically providing a digital-only touch point to customers, where customers basically can be verified digitally as well as authenticated and authenticate transactions completely digitally as well. All right, so I'll be moving into the demo where we will be showing Onboard Anywhere, which is an app created by Innov8tif, a Joget app created by Innov8tif to actually display the capabilities of customer ID assurance in an onboarding application, right? So these are some of the steps that we'll be taking in this demo application, where the customer will access this application from anywhere. Due to the strength of Joget being a web platform, they can actually access it from anywhere and immediately conduct the SMS OTP, and then move on to the identity verification using EMAS EKYC, basically the scanning of the card and the facial verification. The next step, of course, would be AML check if it is required by that process. And then moving on, it would be customer onboarded. Moving on to the next steps, right? So just some background on Onboard Anywhere. This is an application still in progress. So we are still, Innov8tif still developing this. And so we have just created a short demo to show you a tidbit of what is coming. All right, so as you can see over here, this is a very simple system that we have created using all of the components of the customer identity assurance side of things. All of this is powered by Joget. As you can see from here, this is the Joget platform DX8. And let's start the demo. All right, so you can see over here, the customer will try to open a stock brokerage account over here with a very simple pre-registration form powered by Joget using the low-code form creation of it, right? So one major advantage of this is that a lot of this is powered by Joget, meaning that everything can be adapted to all of the use cases as well. The next step is the SMS verification, where I will enter in a very simple 4-digit and submit to continue to the next step. The next step, of course, would be to conduct the eKYC, and I will scan this QR code in order to conduct the verification of the identity card as well as the face. So over here, there's some simple instructions in order to scan the front of the ID card in order to capture the document, whether this be a ID card or a passport that is also both available, and the back of the ID card over here. Now, do bear in mind that for the ID card, of course, there is a front and back, but in case of a passport, it would only be a front because there's only one page in a passport for that channel of verification. The next step would be the selfie to make sure that the person is a live person as well as the same person as the ID card to make sure that there is a correct matching there. So we'll submit a short video and press confirm. So after this has been completed, then it would give us the result that the identity has been verified. And now we will return back to the processes, onboarding processes over here. So we can see that it has automatically proceeded to the next step of information gathering. So we'll, of course, fill in all of the information needed. We also do have some of the information already pre-populated by the ID scanning. And over here, we'll just put in some information of residents, the current residents over here. And also, something just to highlight would be, you can see a lot of these fields and everything does have options and whatever. All this is powered by Joget and using the low-code features of Joget. So as you can see from here, this is just some forms. But something I just want to bring to your attention would be the audit trail. So this is something that's very easily implemented with Joget, where you can actually have a traceability option for your processes, right? With the date, time, and everything all being able to be traced. The next step over here, you can see is the TNC and privacy policy. So over here, we'll just click a accept. And we have an AML checking success complete from the backend. And we have a customer onboarded just like that. All right, so that actually concludes the very short demo that I have of this demo system. Do bear in mind that this is something that's a work in progress by Innov8tif, just something, a tidbit for you to actually take note. All right, so thank you everyone. That actually concludes what I have for today. Over here, you can see some of the details of how you can actually contact us in any of the channels that you actually do want to contact us. If you have any questions on the Onboard Anywhere or any of the components that I mentioned before on customer identity assurance. All right. Thank you. Penny, over to you.
Thank you, Neil, for the presentation and the walkthrough of the Onboard Anywhere solution. So now I would like to hand the floor over to Hugo, who will walk us through the steps to get started on Joget and some case studies in the finance and the insurance sector. So Hugo, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Neil, for the walkthrough on the eKYCs and solutions on how to be able to onboard customers seamlessly digitally. Please allow me to quickly run through what is Joget and how you also would be able to create applications on the Joget low-code, no-code platform as well. So as what you have seen throughout the demo earlier, right, and it is being used to power the eKYC solutions by Innov8tif as well, right? So Joget is an open source, no-code, web-based applications building platform, right? That allows everyone, right? Doesn't matter if you are a programmer or you are business users, right? You can use it to perform prototyping, design, and even runs your enterprise grade applications all in the same platform. So this will lead to reductions of time, right? Because it can be used by any skill set, right? Yeah, and we have customers in various sectors and verticals, right? So it's just to show some numbers on our footprint in here. So Joget is, as it is open source, right? It is also platform agnostics, right? No matter what your technology stacks are, right? You would be able to run it in all the major clouds. If you have it hosted or you are running cloud native platforms, and you can also choose to run it on-prem in your own hardware as well, right? You can even have Joget installed in a Kubernetes-based environment, and we are the only no-code platforms that is certified in the Red Hat marketplace, right? So you can have Joget running in your OpenShift environments in no time as well. So you would be able to find us in Forrester's and Gartner's reports as well. And we are, last but not least, right, on the bottom right, as you can see, we are a gold tiers status partner, right, in Project Management Institute's partner program as well. So how do we get started on Joget, right? So you do not need to even install Joget on your machine per se, right? You can run it off Joget on-demand cloud as well, right? So just head towards our website and hit on the Get Started button. It only takes under a minute to have Joget running, so you can try it out, right? So you can run it using our on-demand services, right? Or if you would like to explore the technology stacks and have more control, right? You can have it downloaded on-prem, right? So that you can host it yourself, and as well as the various deployment options that's available, right? So as I explained earlier, right? So you can have it installed in any platform OS or databases of your choice as well, as we are platform agnostics. So Neil has actually walked us through use cases on how one can make use of our platforms, right, in building solutions on top of it. So this is one of our key customers. Allied Benefits is a insurance providers, right? So we have helped them to improve their customers onboarding process, right? So before this, they had various systems, and it is there are data silos there, right? And it is a hassle, right? Because they would need to go through different systems in order to fully onboard a customers, right? So with the adoptions of Joget, they would be able to onboard more customers, right, in lesser times. That would translate to increased productivities, and they are able to get their return on investments on time earlier as well. Right, moving on, PT Eon Credit Service, they are in finance, FSI, right? FSI's verticals. So they adopted Joget, right, in modernizing their business operations, as there are many processes in their organizations, and it is very time consuming in order to go through different systems. There's paper flow, and there are legacy monolith systems, right, that one would need to navigate through, right? So it is very confusing, right? No matter who you are, because there are, as you can see in the after, right? They have consolidated in 23 different flows, right, into a single system, right? So they end up with a one-stop centers where users would have a cockpit view on all the items that needs his or her attention, right? So this has tremendously increased the amount of requests or approval that they would be able to filter through, right? As all of these different sets of systems are now consolidated into a single point of view, right? AKA, we have a universal inbox now, right? So it is very easy for the users to make use of it. And since all the data are now consolidated into a single system, they would also be able to track each and every approval, their SLA, right? And they will be able to complete in stipulated time as well. Last but not least, we have SSI Securities Corporations, right? So again, they are coming from a legacy systems and where they are not able to make changes to the systems fast enough, right, in order to adopt to the latest business processes, right? So for example, when COVID happened, right, there's a need to change the way that they work, the way that customers would approach them for help as well, right? So not being able to adapt to latest business requirement and changes, right? This actually hampered their ability to resolve customers' issues in due time, right? So with the adoptions of Joget, they would be able to as Joget as a no-code, low-code platform, right? It is agile. It's built to react to changes, right? And with that, they would be able to make all the necessary changes to the form design and to consolidate permission control as well, right? So this would result in time reductions, right? In resolving customers' tickets and as well as cost reductions as the ability to maintain the systems as the learning curve, right? To learn Joget and maintain the systems has now reduced as well. We have introduced Joget DX version 8 a couple months back, right? So it has few new features, right, that you can look forward to, right? So it has the latest responsive PWA design, right? So you'll be able to appreciate, end users will be able to appreciate the modern SPA, single page applications, modern design, and there would be enhanced user experience, whether you are using it as an end users or developing it as an app designer as well, right? So we do not just stop there, as in you can use Joget right at the start from wireframing, prototyping, from the ideation process, so to speak, right, to implementations and even post implementations, as well as we would have health check reports and applications performance management, right, to make sure that whatever that you have developed, right, we would be able to attach a performance measurements or error reporting to it, right? So we will continue, it will continue to keep you updated on the well-being and the performance of your applications as well. So, yep, just head up to this website, right, joget.org/dx8, and you will be able to find out more about Joget. Thank you, Penny. Over back to you.
All right. So with that, I believe the audience now has a better understanding of the implementation framework of CIDA, including identity proofing, customer due diligence, and authentication, as well as on the Joget platform. So now let's move on to the Q&A session, and let's see what are the questions that the audience has for us. So I have the first question. How do you prevent the same customer having multiple accounts? So Neil, do you have any idea on this?
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for the question. Yeah, so how do we prevent the same customer from having multiple accounts? There are multiple ways. So the first barrier of entry or barrier or first check that we can implement is, of course, the ID number check, right? So if it's a genuine customer using a genuine document, we would detect that the ID number is the same as something that's already registered inside the system. We can prevent that customer from being onboarded. The next way we can actually look at is if, let's say, a customer, or rather somebody, is actually trying to fraud the system, right? So let's say they have an identity document with the same face. It's a genuine document with the same face, but they change a bit of the data here and there to try to create a new account. right? So in that case, what we can actually implement is a one-to-N facial verification, right? So we will compare that person's face with all of the faces already registered in your system, and basically try and detect if that person already exists as an existing customer, that person's face, whether that person's face already exists. And that's what we call a duplication check for biometrics. So these are just a few ways we can implement to prevent the same customer from having multiple accounts. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you for that. So the second question is, in terms of aging on the ID card and the real face, will it create any kind of errors, or will it be rejected?
Okay, that's a good question. Thanks for that question. So in terms of aging, how does aging actually affect the identity or ID card verification, right? So let's say a person is, let's say, 50 years old versus the ID card, which has a age of, let's say, 30, right? So we actually observe that as long as the age gap is 30 or below, there is no effect on facial verification, right? We are able to detect that it's the same person or reject it as the same person with no problem, right? Anything above 30% would face a bit of a drop-off in terms of accuracy. But do bear in mind that even many identity documents around the world actually does have a lot of governments around the world actually have a regulation where if you cross a certain age limit, age gap, between your current age and your identity card, that you would actually be required to create a new identity card. So you would actually be, so your identity document should be updated as long as it's above 30.
Okay, thank you. So the next question we have is it possible to submit a form or approve a process on Joget even when it's offline?
Let me take that question. I think it is towards the Joget platform, right? So Joget is what the applications that develop on Joget, it is PWA ready. You would be able to submit forms or edit existing records or to complete processes assignment as well, right? So those data will be stored offline, and when you go online again, synchronizations will then happen with the actual Joget server itself. And if there's any errors, of course, you will be able to have the chance to review and to modify the form data and submit again. So in short, yes, it is possible.
Okay, thank you, Hugo. So moving on to the next question. In terms of the EPYC, the EMAS CIDA solution, will there be any license fee incurred to integrate the solution? So probably this is for you, Neil.
All right, thank you. In terms of license fee, okay, so for the EMAS CIDA solution, we have that I've presented so far, all the components. Yes, there will be a fee in order to integrate this solution. Of course, do feel free to contact us via the sales links and everything that we have flashed above before, and then we can work something out. But the good news is that all of the CIDA components are modularized and can be used based on your use case, right? So if, let's say, you only require some of the solutions, so that would be entirely possible with just some of the components rather than having to have it as a package. But thank you for that question.
Okay, thank you, Neil. And that's about it for our Q&A session. So seems that we have now come to the end of the webinar. And before we go, as usual, we have plenty of Joget resources where you can use of, such as the step-by-step tutorial on the Joget Marketplace. And you can also enroll in our Joget Academy for short courses and download readme apps and plugins from the Joget Marketplace to use it as is or to use it as template to customize it to suit your needs. And with that, let's see who are two lucky winners of the Academy vouchers. So the first winner goes to Jonathan. Congratulations, Jonathan. And the second winner goes to Paul. So congratulations, Jonathan and Paul. We will reach out to you via email and get those vouchers to you guys. So please keep an eye on your inbox, and if you don't see anything there, please don't forget to check your spam folder. So we have now come to the end of the session. Once again, thank you, Neil and Hugo, for delivering a truly enlightening sharing today, as well as the attendees here for joining us and being here at the very end. Your presence and participation have been appreciated. And don't forget to fill up the feedback form after the webinar. And we will see you again in the next session.